Matt Bernie, you're taking a look at the Stronach 5 for Friday, February the 22nd. It's a pick 5 sequence that everyone is going to be paying attention to. 12% takeout, $1 base bet, but the real story there is a carryover of more than $169,000 for this sequence. I'm going to go through this. I won't be giving out a DRF ticket maker play, but that's certainly the way you want to approach this wager. The beautiful thing with DRF ticket maker, you go in, you emphasize your opinions accordingly, you click that bet now button in the upper right hand corner, and your tickets are punched using DRF bets. It's a beautiful, seamless way, and I think this is the kind of sequence that ticket maker is going to be useful for, because to me there are a few races in this 5-race sequence that could go any number of ways. But again, I'm just going to give you more ideas. You use them, you don't like them, you like them, whatever the case may be. Use these hopefully to help you form your opinions for this wager. Kick things off with the 9th at Laurel Park on Friday. That is going to be the first leg. Two horses I'm going to look at in this $5,000 beaten claiming race. The 3 and the 8. I think the 3, My Chessa Charm, as well as the 8 horse in this spot, Trufflesburg. Those are the two most likely winners. Trufflesburg particularly off the claim for Anthony Ferrier. If you look at any of those Timeform US ratings, they're fast enough to win in this spot. Off the claim here for Ferrier, coming off of a 4% trainer. This is going to be a forward move up here. And I think also getting back to a more reasonable level. Go back to the beaten $16,000 claiming race back on June 28th down at Delaware Park. And then the race just prior to that, the N3L race down at Delaware, the claiming 12-5 rank. To me, those are the races that are most indicative of what this horse is capable of. I think Trufflesburg is a likely contender. And again, as far as the 3 horse is concerned, another one coming off of a claim, getting some class relief, going from a $16,000 claiming event most recently, now goes out for Jamie Ness in this beaten claimer. Those would be the only 2 horses that I'd be looking at here, because again, these other races, I think they're wide open. You move on to the second leg here, the 10th down at Gulfstream Park. This is a non-winners of 2 other than going a mile and a 16th on the turf course. I'm going to talk briefly about 6 horses, but I think there are a number of other ones that you could also include. And then conversely, of these 6, you could probably narrow it down to 2 or 3 if you really wanted to. And again, just using A's, B's, and C's with ticket maker or anything like that. 2, 5, 8, 10, 11, 12, I thought were intriguing horses for different reasons. The 2 Space Mountain is the one that I do quite like this horse. He's going to be a price. I don't think he's the most likely winner of the race, but you take a look and see the last 2 times this horse was at the N2X level. You have victories. One was over soft turf down at Churchill Downs. The other one was over yielding turf at Churchill. So you have to be a little bit wary of that. You also look at Rusty Arnold's overall strike rate thus far at Gulfstream, a little bit suspect. Luca Panici, not someone he normally rides. But at the end of the day, he comes out of a very, very strong race. Bricks and Mortar, we know what he did in the Pegasus. The runner-up, Mr. Cub, came back and earned a 93. And the 8th place finisher, the horse that actually finished behind Space Mountain, was the next out winner with a 98 Buyer speed figure. That was Irish Straight. So I think this horse is coming into this in actually sneaky good form. He's one that I really want to have some coverage in. The number 5 Battle of Blenheim, I think, is going to be a horse that most people look at. First time out for Pletcher. Most recently saw this horse over the summer at Belmont Park with Chad Brown. Been gone for some time, has been gelded in the meantime. Irad Ortiz has the mount. Again, from a numbers standpoint, this horse makes perfect sense, has tactical ability. Todd's numbers off of a long layoff. Don't need to go over those. You know how well he does with this move. The number 8, Dr. Edgar. Don't know that this would be the key for Dr. Edgar and the other horses out of that race from January the 6th. There's a real chance that it's not as good initially as it looks. Siding Spring, a horse that I want to give a little bit of a look to. He came back and was a little bit disappointing in his next start. He had a pretty good trip. I know it was a fast pace in the grand scheme of things, but I expected more from him. This is a horse, Dr. Edgar, Siding Spring. I'd probably be using them more as B's or even C's, depending on how much stock I wanted to put in some other horses, but definitely one on his best day that can get it done. The 10 Medal of Honor is the one that I think, really, put it this way. Based on form, I don't see a hell of a lot here to like. But it's Chad, it's Javier, it's first time North America. I'm not going to let this horse knock me out of a sequence that's got almost $170,000 carry over it. Are you? If you are, tip of the cap. You're braver than I. I'm going to use this horse. He's going to be an A. Again, based on form, I don't see much to like here, but at the end of the day, Chad has done better with much worse. Medal of Honor, I think, is definitely one that you need to consider. I brought up Siding Spring. I liked him in that El Prado. I didn't think he ran that great. I know the pace, Timeform US has it just ballistic. Pace ratings of 174 and 139 early on, but he faded. I thought he should have done a little bit better. And if you're looking for kind of an odd horse in here, I've always been a fan of Lunaire, the 12. He didn't like to win races very often. He's 2 for 21, and one of those wins came on dirt 3 starts back. And he's got a bunch of little nibbles, 9 times second or third. But I do think early on, I thought he was going to be a stakes horse. Maybe that's not really what he is at this point, but I do believe that there is a little bit of ability here. And getting back to the turf, I think that'll help his cause. Let's move on to the nightcap at Gulfstream. It's the third leg of this week's Stronach 5. This week's Stronach 5 for the 22nd of February. This is a difficult race for me to really give you much detail because it's a maiden $20,000 claiming race, mile on the turf. It's an interesting race as is. The problem is the 4 horses on the also eligible list, the 13 Beekeeper, the 14 Down to the Felt, the 15 Bold Painter, and the 16 Impossible Mission, if any of them draw in, they're very likely contenders. If they all draw in, this race all of a sudden becomes that much more difficult. To me, they're all contenders. So you need to keep an eye on them if they should draw in. If they don't draw in and you're looking at the body, 2, 4, 6, and 12 I thought were interesting. The 2 indisputably linked. Admittedly, I don't love this horse, but I do think getting back to the turf, first time going out on grass for Anthony Margotto Jr., I think is going to help this one. Perhaps is not a sexy pick. I think this is the morning line favorite at 2-1, but it's a horse that I think you have to use defensively, if nothing else. Maybe it's not an A for you, but I do think you need to be using a horse like this because it's one of the more likely winners of the horses that are already in the body. The 4 Moe's Ride goes out, first time starter for George Weaver. There's not a lot for me to be thrilled with here other than the fact that I think it's interesting that Irad Ortiz takes them out first out, and Weaver has been known to hit with some first-time starters in the past. Sydney's Candy, the sire, about 11% with the first-time turf runners. The Dam was a multiple stakes winner, but 0 for 5 on grass, and the continuing sort of the concerning trend as far as pedigree is concerned, there are no winning siblings as far as grass is concerned. So there's not a lot here pedigree-wise that would suggest this horse is ready to roll, but if Irad sees fit to take them out, I do kind of feel like if you don't love anybody else in this field, take a fresh face with the high percentage connections. Moe's Ride is one I think you need to consider. You want a little bit of a price in here? How about the 6 In Gus We Trust? In Gus We Trust, most recently, they tried him on the main track in a 12-5 maiden claimer. He earned a 5 Beyer speed figure. Didn't do any kind of running at odds of 10-1, but there's reasons to me to believe that this horse is actually a little bit dirtied up here. He's by Orb. Now, the Orbs overall, it's kind of cooled off as far as the grass is concerned. I still think grass is probably the best as far as what Orb's ability is as a sire. I think he's right around that 9% range. But this horse has only started on grass one time. That was 2 starts back. Earned a 39 Beyer and a 58 time form rating. I recognize those don't look sexy, but those are actually competitive in here. The Dam was 4 for 6 on grass, and this horse is a big price. This is one that I'd definitely be using as a C, and again, if you've got a bigger budget, perhaps you want to elevate this one to a B. And then the other horse in the body of the race that I do really want to use, and again, from a post position standpoint, it's no bargain. From a number standpoint, there's not a heck of a lot to like. The 12 Zaman or Zaman, however you want to go about it, has taken money in each of the first 2 starts. The first start was on turf, bumped the rail, had an issue. Draw a line through that. I'm not going to hold that against him. Comes back off of a long layoff. They run him on the main track going a 1-turn mile. He gets claimed out of that race by Yvonne Belsoir. Belsoir's numbers about 31% with the first off the claim runners. Morning line, the sire, about 16% with his turf runners. I just have a funny feeling that this horse is actually better than what you've seen so far because you've got 2 non-efforts. I think this horse is actually a little bit sneaky in here. There's a little bit to like on the Dam side. Zaman is one that I definitely want to use, even if those other horses draw in from the AE list. But again, this race, you really need to wait and see who runs and who doesn't, because the outside 4 on the AE list, they're all live should they get in. The 4th leg, we've got the Golden Gate Fields. Another one that's a bit of a scramble in my opinion. It's 5 furlongs, maiden $8,000 claimers on the synthetic surface. You get a number of horses that exit a common race. Frankly, I don't love the common race, but I do think you have to look at it and say some of those horses are more likely winners than others in a spot like this. I still don't know how Behold the Gold spit a 5-length lead with a couple hundred yards to go. This horse was cruising and then just hit the wall and got run over by the winner and the runner-up. The runner-up is back in this spot. I want to use Behold the Gold simply because there was a fast pace that day, and that was off of a little bit of a layoff. If all of a sudden that horse can ration some of that speed, and I know there's speed down on the rail, Behold the Gold to me is a horse that can take a step forward here in second start off the bench. And I would just hate for me watching that race, and I know he's burned money. 4 consecutive starts, he's been single-digit odds in each one of them, and he's just not been able to get the job done. I think there's reason to believe that that race might be a little bit better than it looks. 2 next out winners exited that heat, and I do think Behold the Gold, he's going to get some fitness out of that run here, second start off the bench. If you are not sold on that horse, how about Twice as Windy or Princess Run It? Those were the 2nd and 3rd place finishers in that race. They both went past Behold the Gold in that spot. From a number standpoint, they both make sense. The other good thing about each of them, they were both second-time starters here, so you would just assume that that natural progression from start 1 to start 2, that could be enough to elevate them up here. Chamboozle is a first-time starter. Look, I don't love the pedigree here. Champ Pegasus 3 for 70 with the first-time starters. Doesn't really suggest that this one's going to be ready to fire out of the gate, but at the same time, the connections are quite good with this move. 21% with the first-time starters, debuting in maiden claiming ranks. You can see down there at the bottom the raw number of 30% and a 494 ROI. Definitely one that you want to consider using. And if those aren't of any interest, how about the 10 flat-out fine for Frank Lucarelli? Now, it's dangerous. Flat out, it's not an apples-to-apples comparison, but flat out on turf, not strong. I know this is on synthetic, but if you're looking to make some sort of comparison there, highest last out buyer in the field, highest last out raw time form US rating. The problem is those were both back in September, which is a good thing and a bad thing considering those are 2-year-old numbers for this filly. But all of her starts have come on dirt. She's taken money in each one of them, and she hasn't been able to get over the hump. Maybe the changeover and against weaker is going to be enough to get it done. I want to use her, but I don't know that I would just be all in on her in a spot like this. And that leads us to the payoff leg of this thing, which again, I really believe this is going to pay well, not just because of the dead money that's in the pool, but I just think this is a sequence that if you get, let's say two horses that pay, in that $15 range, I think this thing's going to pay quite well, given the low takeout and given that $1 base bet. The 5th race at Santa Anita is the 5th leg of the Stronach 5 on Friday afternoon. It's a non-winners of 1 other than 6.5 down the hill. Another situation, if the 11 or 12 on the AE list get in, I think they're both intriguing, but I do like the 3 and the 7, particularly the 3 in here. I think Trustini from Mike Pipey is very live. Drayden Van Dyke has the most recent run draw line through it. That was on dirt. That was off of a long layoff as well. The run 2 starts back. That's the one. If this filly can run that race, and I know if she can run that race, I think she got a big chance in here. You take a look at it overall, I just kind of feel like that race there, the 75 buyer and the 104 raw time form rating, either of those figures I think is going to be right there. I think Trustini is a very, very live candidate in here. And the other horse is the 7, Animosity. Animosity, you go back to the career debut, broke the maiden at first asking, never an easy thing to do. Has really been thrown to the wolves, is running some tough spots, but because she looks like she's a good one, then she missed some time. Don't hold that Lady Shamrock off the long bench, off the long layoff, I should say, against her. I think that was probably just, take a shot, see if it works. Now she comes back off of a little bit of a layoff again, but going down the hill. Perhaps that's what she needs all along. Again, keep an eye on those horses on the also eligible list, but as far as the body is concerned, the 3 and the 7, and I'm really intrigued by the 3. So there you have it. A quick look at the Stronach 5 for Friday, February the 22nd. It's a pick 5 with the Stronach family of tracks. The big story with this week's Stronach 5, a carryover of $169,000 going into Friday's card. 12% takeout, $1 base bet. It's a pick 5. The first leg of this Friday's Stronach 5 is the 9th at Laurel Park. Scheduled post time is 4:35 Eastern. Good luck.